what was the focus of American politics during this period of the era of good feelings? And it's called, in your book, I think they call it the national consensus. And otherwise, it's also called the American system. And it consists of three different policies. One, that there should be a national bank. Two, that there should be protective tariffs. And three, that there should be infrastructure. Okay, that they should spend money on infrastructure. So we're going to talk about what each of the three of these things is. And then we're going to look at how they affected the different regions. Okay, you guys are with me? Questions, comments? All right, so the first one then, the national bank. What would be the purpose of having a national bank? Remember, we talked about this earlier. We talked about that Hamilton wanted a national bank and Jefferson was against it. But they ended up with a national bank. But why would the national bank be important in the American system? What does it do?
International credit, right?
It actually stabilizes the currency, all right, and so it makes American credit good, and it makes American money worth something, right? The national bank actually enhances America's worth on the world market. Okay, does that make sense to you guys? Questions, comments? Protective tariffs are, you know what a tariff is, right? Somebody tell me tariff. What's a tariff?
It's like a tax you pay on imports.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Tax on imports, right? And so you get a star too, Joe. A tax on imports. And what's the purpose of a tax on imports?
To try to make it so that you try to buy or manufacture in the States rather than importing it, maybe?
Okay, that's actually right when we talk about protective tariffs. Now, let me just say this. At this time, the governments of almost all the countries made their money by tariffs. So the United States actually didn't tax the people, but instead what they did was they taxed imports. And that's how the federal government got its money, okay? And that was true of a number of other countries at the same time. But protective tariffs are different because the purpose of a protective tariff is to protect American industry. And the reason why that's important is we look at before the Revolution, the British had basically forbidden the colonies to manufacture, okay? And the reason why was because the purpose of the colony was to produce raw materials to the manufacturing plants in England, who could then turn them into finished goods that could be sold back to the colonies. And that meant then when the United States becomes independent, it's actually behind in terms of industry compared to the British. And what that meant was that the British could actually produce and sell goods in America for less than American manufacturers could make them, right? You guys are all following me here? So let me just give you a kind of a thought experiment here, which is it's not real. I'm just making up some numbers to demonstrate, right? But let's say that you have British shoes and you have American shoes, okay? The British can make a good quality pair of shoes and sell it in the United States at a profit for $3, right? But the American manufacturers of shoes, it actually, their shoes that they make are not quite as good quality. And in order for them to make a profit, they have to sell it at $5, right? So you are the consumer and you go to the shoe store and you want to buy shoes and you see the good quality British shoes for $3 and the not quite so good quality American shoes for $5. Which one are you going to buy? You're going to buy the British shoes, right? Okay, so what happens then is that the United States imposes a tax on the import of British shoes. And that tax is a $4 tax, right? Or a $3 tax, okay? So what that means then is that now you go to the shoe store to buy shoes and you see the good quality British shoes for $6, but the almost as good quality American shoes for $5. Which one are you going to buy? at this point, it makes sense to be patriotic, right? Okay. So the purpose of these tariffs then is to support American industry. And this is going to actually be one of the most successful uh, policies that the United States enacts, because by the beginning of the 20th century, the United States is the most powerful industrial country in the world. Okay. All right. So we'll leave it at that. Questions, comments about this? Okay. Does everybody know what infrastructure is, or anybody? I mean, they're talking about infrastructure now, an infrastructure bill that they're talking about trying to get through Congress. What is infrastructure?
Like farms and buildings and stuff like that.
Actually, it's not really that. It's
Roads.
the stuff
It's
that connects
roads.
those, right? So it's roads and
Rivers.
canals and airports. They didn't do airports at the time, right? But roads and canals and things like that. Now, why would that be important? Well, the reason why is because America is divided by mountains. And in order to get goods from, we already talked about this, in order to get goods from the west to the east, you have to bring it around the entire continent. You have to bring it down to New Orleans and ship it to the east, right? And so if you could build roads and canals from the west to the east, that would make it easier for people in the west to get their products to the east. Do you guys follow what I'm saying here? So now those are the three policies. What I'm going to do next is I know you guys probably don't like this, and I'm not crazy about it either, but I'm going to try to make a little whiteboard here so that we can kind of consider these policies, okay, in terms of region. I'm going to make a table, right? And let me see if I can figure out how to do this. The table is going to be, we're going to have north, south, and west. So now we're going to make 3 rows: national bank, protective tariffs, infrastructure. So now, having said all that we said, right, we want to think about, okay, the purpose of the national bank is to do what?
Create one whole bank for
I'm
all
sorry?
states.
Yeah, but what is the reason for it? Why do we want that?
Stabilized currency.
Okay, so who does that actually help? If you're in the north, is it a good idea to have a national bank?
Because they want trade.
Yeah, it's a good idea. So it's good. How can I make it good? What's a good symbol? How about, let's put a plus sign, right? A plus sign. It's good. Okay. But in the South, is it going to be good for you to have a national bank? Keep in mind, the economy of the South is export agriculture. Their economy is not a trading economy. It's export agriculture. So is it going to be good to have a national bank for the South, for the people of the South? Is it going to be good or bad, or neither? It's probably going to be neither, right? It's not going to affect them at all very much. All right. So we just put a kind of a minus there. It's not a minus, but that's just a kind of it's a neutral sign. Okay. And then what about the West? Is the national bank going to help or hurt the West?
Out of the 3, a negative for the West.
Okay, you're actually right. Why is that? The reason why is because let's think about the economies of the North, South, and West, right? The North is a trading, commercial economy, industrializing economy. The South is a plantation agriculture, basically a kind of a almost feudal economy. And the West, most of the economy in the West is based on farming. But in order to farm, you need what? Land, right? And so what happens is that the West, the biggest commercial interest in the West, or the biggest economic interest in the West, is land speculation, buying and selling real estate, essentially, right? Okay, so now if the national bank stabilizes the credit markets by making it more difficult to get credit. Okay, you guys should really be paying attention to this. Okay, so if it makes it more difficult to get credit, what effect does that have on the real estate market? It makes it harder to get credit, right? So it makes it harder to buy things. And because of that, because the major economic activity in the West is based on real estate speculation, how is that going to affect the West? Is it going to be good or bad?
Bad.
It's going to be bad, right? Okay, so here we have the national bank. It helps the North. It really doesn't affect the South that much, and it hurts the West. All right, you guys got that? Now let's take a look at protective tariffs. What is the purpose of protective tariffs?
Tax on imports.
And what is the purpose of it?
Protect American industry.
Protect American industry, right? So is that going to help or hurt the North?
It'll help out the North because they're a trading economy.
Right, so it'll help the North. What about the South?
They're, like you said, they're mostly an export economy, and there's tariffs on exports as well, so it might hurt them a little bit.
Right, it doesn't hurt them a little bit, it hurts them a lot, okay? At least from their point of view. So we're going to put two negatives there, right? Because, oh, I'm sorry, that's not how we do it. We do it like this, XX, sorry about that. Okay, the reason why is because just like you said, if the Americans raise tariffs on British imports, then the British are going to raise tariffs on American exports. And the major export of the United States is cotton. And their major buyer is England. And so if what that means then is that they raise tariffs on American exports, that means that the Southerners aren't getting as much money, right? You guys are following me here? But then the other half of that is that the South doesn't manufacture, so that means they have to import things that are manufactured. And so they end up having to pay tariffs on the things that they're importing. So on the one hand, they're not making as much money from their exports. And on the other hand, they're paying more money for their imports. You guys follow what I'm saying? And this is why the South is going to be dead set against tariffs. It's going to be one of the major issues that leads to the Civil War. Okay, you guys are with me? So, and then what about the West? How do tariffs affect the West?
Kind of just a neutral.
Yeah, it's a neutral. You're right. I think that's right. Okay, so then let's take a look at infrastructure. What is the purpose of infrastructure again?
Create roads and pathways to help trade and get stuff through the states.
Right, to get things from the West to the East, right? So where do they go in the East? Is it going to help or hurt the North?
It'll help the North with their trade economy. They want to get as much goods out as possible for their
Exactly.
trading.
Okay. It's gonna help the North. How's it going to affect the South? It's not really, because the South isn't manufacturing anything, and they're not exporting anything to the North, right? So we're just kind of a negative. They're kind of a neutral there, and then it will help the West, right? Because the West can get their goods to the East easier. You guys follow what I'm saying here? So now when we take a look at this chart that I just made, right? The national bank helps the North, it doesn't really affect the South, and it hurts the West. Protective tariffs help the North, they really hurt the South, at least from their point of view, and it really doesn't affect the West. Infrastructure helps the North, doesn't really affect the South, and it helps the West. So what do we gain from looking at this chart, at this table? What kind of understanding can we?
North more than
Everything
it helps the
helps.
others.
Everything helps the North.
The South was
Something-
really unhappy.
Right, the South is very unhappy, right? Because the South, now here's the reason why, just so you know, and you really need to keep this in mind, and that is that the population of the North is growing rapidly, but the population of the South is essentially stagnant. It's not really growing, right? Population of the West is also growing, right? But the reason why the South is getting left out is because there's more people in the North than there are in the South. What effect would that have on the national government?
They have more power in Congress, or
Which part of Congress?
in the House of Representatives.
Exactly. And that's where most of the laws are introduced. Okay, and so the South will come to believe that maybe it's not even in their interest to be in the United States. And this is where we start to see a sentiment grow in the South towards what we'll call secession, okay? Division. You guys are with me? Questions, comments about that?